picture this. It's actually the year 1993 or so. NWA is playing on the radio. And I am in...
Wait, didn't this story happen at nighttime?
Well, yeah, I mean, technically, yes, it did. It did happen in the nighttime. Okay, yeah, so again, picture this. It's 1993. NWA is playing on the radio.
But wait, it is 1993? Why are you in the driver's seat? You are just a kid.
God damn it. Okay. So, it's 1993. NWA is playing on the radio. And I am hanging out with my big brother. So even though NWA is on the radio, I feel like I have to tell you guys that my favorite band at around this time is actually Silk, which was an R&B group that sang really sexual songs that I didn't understand as a child in 1993. I will sing you one of their songs right now. This is one of their most famous ones. Listen to this. It went something like, let me lick you up and down till you say stop. Okay, you can go Google that and listen to the rest. It's kind of a raunchy song for a 10-year-old, but I was pretty like naive, so I had no idea. I thought they were talking about popsicles or something. And if you're wondering which one was my favorite one was like the one that wore the overalls sometimes. He was super cute. He was super cute. He was so cute.
Get to the point of the story though.
Okay, whatever. So 1993, NWA on the radio. I had a crush on the one I just told you about from Silk. I was listening to NWA because I was with my brother. Life is very good right now. So I'm with my brother and we go for a ride in his car. And back then my brother had like a really cool 1972 Chevrolet Impala, 4 doors. This thing was as big as a spaceship. So we went to see one of his friends. We drove over to my brother's friend's house. And my brother went inside just for a few minutes before we were going to go back home. And so it's 1993, which is a long time ago. And it's just safer. It's safer to leave like a kid in the car at this point. And so he leaves me there. He goes into his friend's house just for a few moments. So thinking back about this story or this thing that happened, I was totally okay at first. I knew where I was, and even though it was dark, I knew like exactly what house we were at. I knew the friend's house we were at, and I just felt totally okay. He said, I'll be right back. I said, okay. I'm sitting there, no problem at first. But after a few minutes, I started to feel really anxious, just out of nowhere. A few minutes just sitting there with the car running. It's cold. It was maybe like November or December. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, anxiety. This nagging thought came over me out of nowhere. I was just like, oh my God, for some reason, I need to turn the car off. I need to turn the car off right now. So now, you guys, my brother had told me just to sit there and chill out. Not to turn the car off, not to get out and walk the streets. He just told me to chill out and sit there. And everywhere that I'd ever gone with my brother up until this day, he always came back. There was never any problem. There was never any reason for me to freak out and think that he would be gone for a long time or he would like abandon me or something. So I have no idea where this anxious thought came from. But I was just thinking over and over and over, I have to turn off the car. The car is wasting gas. And even back then, I kind of understood that older cars burn gas a little bit faster than newer cars. And so those thoughts just started like all in my head. So I looked around to see if he was on his way back. I looked out of the window. I did not see my brother. But this overwhelming, anxious thought about turning the car off and just it being uncontrollable just kept nagging me in my head. So I reached over and I turned off the ignition. But then I shortly realized that, guess what? Now you're cold. Now it's December or November and it's cold outside, and you have let this nagging thought about turning off the car and conserving gas get you in trouble, because now you're sitting in a cold car, a cold old car. The problem is that I had let this nagging thought totally overtake my mind and put me in not that great of a situation. I had actually let this nagging thought totally override my logic. I had just shut off the machine that was keeping me warm. And at this point in time, I was actually too small to restart the car, because it being an older car, it was a little finicky and my little legs would not reach the pedals to restart the car anyway. So as I waited for my brother to come back to the car, I just fell into like a shame spiral, because I was like, oh no, now I feel stupid because now I'm cold and I'm waiting on my brother, and I did something he told me not to do, which I wasn't chilling out. He told me to chill out and I did not chill out. I turned the car off. So luckily not much time passed before he came back to the car.
What happened to the car?
That's what he immediately asked me. He thought that there was some malfunction with the car and it had shut itself off. I turned it off because I thought you needed to save gas. That was my response. My brother just kind of looked at me with a kind but confused look on his face. He just cranked the car again. He didn't fuss at me or anything. He just cranked it up again. He sat there for a few moments after he had cranked the car up and I was kind of starting to reheat. And then he finally said to me,
"You know what, baby sister? You should not worry so much."
I was very confused by this advice. I think he could even look at me and tell that I had never even considered that worrying less, or at least trying to be more aware of my thoughts that make me feel like I'm worrying, that I hadn't even thought of that as an option. And I think that he could look at me and tell, like, this might be news to this young child. I actually remember as a kid being called a worrywart like all of the time. That was one of the things that I remember the adults saying to me a lot as a kid, like even as a little kid, like, "Oh, sweetheart, you're such a worrywart, don't worry about it," you know. So thinking back to this situation, I distinctly remember this whole night, because I remember it being one of the first times, or if not the first time, that I was cognizant of the fact that worrying is an option, especially for most like small mundane things, like if you're burning an extra $1 or $2 of gas. I had not really considered that there was even an option to not worry. Honestly, up until this point, and up until, again, somewhat recently when I started to go to therapy, I kind of thought that worrying was just a requirement of being alive, like breathing or breathing. So you breathe and you worry. That's how we know you're alive, right? But here is what my brother told me.
Sometimes, baby sister, you just have to say, bleep it. Can you say that? Can you just say, bleep it? Bleep it, bleep it, bleep
remember my brother was kind of throwing his hands up as he was saying, bleep it, bleep it, bleep it. He seemed so joyous. But I was like, I can't say that. But he kept encouraging me to say bleep it.
Yes, you can. Bleep it, bleep it, bleep it.
Now, knowing myself, I am pretty sure that I did not follow along with my brother's enthusiastic chants of bleep it. But regardless or not, if that night, all those years ago, I actually followed along with his advice, that's irrelevant right now. Because even though I did not follow along, I probably did not follow along, the advice still stuck in my head up until this point, decades later. Being told as a kid, even though at that time I didn't automatically turn off a switch and stop worrying, but at least being told that I had the option to control my thoughts or at least have a better relationship with them by being a little bit more carefree and acknowledging when I'm worrying, but then choosing to at least try to be a little bit more carefree. That advice has really stuck with me, even though I don't always practice it. If you're like me, you can actually be somewhere where you know that you're safe and secure, and anxiety will still just creep up on you and just get you anyway. You can be somewhere on the beach or at the mall, just without a care, and some crazy anxious thought about if you turned your stove off or not will just start to nag you until you're absolutely miserable in your favorite place when just a few minutes ago you were happy and without a worry. But even though you can't always control your thoughts, you can control how you react to the thoughts and how you behave towards yourself when you're having anxious thoughts. If you can remember, even for 1 second, literally even for 1 second, the advice that my brother gave to me, which was say bleep it, if you can remember that, then what you're doing is putting a break, like boop, a little break, a little space between your anxiety, your anxious thoughts, and where you want to be or calm or whatever. So just think about it as a bleeping break. You can also try to make yourself laugh. If you are around another person, perhaps they will say something funny, but you can also kind of think of something funny or make some funny observation in your environment, and making yourself laugh will also help to create a bleeping break in your anxiety. And from that break, then you can choose another thought. I actually made another video where I describe this process, and I will link that video down below and on the screen right now. But the long story short, it's all about the awareness. And you've heard me talk about awareness a couple of times in a couple of other videos at this point. But the awareness of your thoughts is really your strongest ally, your best tool against being overtaken and overcome with the feelings that often manifest after you have experienced a thought. So that's what I took away from my brother's bleeping chant. And all of these years, at this advanced age, now I can finally say it. Yay! I hope he's watching. Oh, wait. Hey, before you go and have a bleeping good night, if you are a fellow anxious meat bag of a human being like I am, make sure to check out one of these other videos that's on your screen right now. I would also love it if you decided to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I would like to hear whatever tips you might have or whatever really good advice that you decided to start taking over 30 years later. Until next time, I am Nicole. This is the Loved and Listened To channel. I hope that you feel loved and listened to today, and I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.